in that sense, he takes the secular, the money changing, and combines it with the profane, and they get equated. And that movement, if you study the nature of money and the persecution of Jews, right, the idea of money and lending have, in the Christian tradition, is the sacred and profane are completely collapsed. And anyone who made money was immoral. They were profane. They weren't just doing secular things. They weren't just out doing business that didn't have to do with the church and religion. They were doing bad things. And so if you lent money and made money on interest, that was immoral. It was completely wrong. And so for history, for those of you who don't know it, because the Jewish people weren't Christian, they weren't bound by that morality. So since Christians couldn't lend money, the Jewish people lent money in the various towns they were in. They became merchants, which is part of the reason why they were vilified, because people owed them money. And so it's easy to hate them, right? It's easy to say they're bad, and they're bad because they're doing something immoral, and they're the cause of the problem, right? So when secular and profane get confused, then the things that make society work, business and money and laws and the impersonal capacity to interact with people who you don't know, right? That whole world gets collapsed into something bad, into the profane, into the non-value. So as we separate out profanity and secular, we can then notice that if we build a matrix, we can show that on the one hand, we've got religious versus secular and sacred versus profane to clarify the issues. And when we do that, we notice that there are 4 quadrants that exist, right? You can actually have religion which is profane. And this is how many of us have come to experience religion, because religion has done some really ugly and stupid things have been done in the name of religion. Things that are definitely profane versus sacred, right? They're about destruction and hate and killing and being mean to people simply because they disagree with your religion, right? A very profane thing. It's not in touch with values. It's not in touch with love and authenticity and meaning and purpose. It's about dogma, right? So it's profane, but it's religious, right? On the opposite side of that spectrum, right, we've got things that are sacred and secular, right? This means that you can actually deal with money, you can deal with business, you can deal with all of the parts of life that you have to deal with, right, that are, food and shelter and cleaning and sewage, all of those things can be dealt with a sacred attitude where we look at what's really important about it and we really care about what that is. So on the extremes, we've got something that would normally not be thought of, which is religious profanity and sacred secularism. Right? And then, of course, you can have the things that we're also used to, which is you've got profane, secular, right? And a lot of the secular world is profane. It doesn't have to do with meaning. It has to do with just whatever you can do to get off. Right? It's a very present tense, self-oriented process that often leaves a lot of casualties because it's not connected with the sacred. It's profane, right? And on the other hand, you can have a religious, sacred experience. And many of us belong to communities or participate in experiences which are classically religious, but we don't tend to call it religious, we call it spiritual, all right? Because we don't want to be lumped in with the religious profane part, right? So we say, oh, I'm not religious, dogmatic, I'm spiritual, I'm into the sacred, right? And so we can have sacred things which are about spirit and meaning and profundity, not necessarily about the secular world. So you end up with these 4 different potentials. And when you clarify them, we can be clear that a lot of people, since sacred and profane and secular collapsed, we end up with the secular being profane. And when we separate those out, we can say, what do we want to achieve? We want to achieve a secular world that we approach with a sacred attitude, right? Where we bring sacredness to the secular, where we bring authenticity to business. And on the one hand, that's about meaning and purpose, right? It's about really enjoying and feeling fulfillment in your work. On the other hand, the more you can authentically bring your truth to your work, the more you can actually thrive in that context, because when you are who you are, all of your power is present. And like anything else, right, you look at an issue and you say, oh, here's what I want to do. You make better, more powerful choices, you communicate more powerfully, and because people sense your authenticity, they trust you more, and so you can do better business dealings. And that's really the route you want to go down. Well, that's the route we hope that you want to go down, and that's the route that the Authentic Business Course is really designed to bring into effect. And you can say that this fundamental idea of separating out religious and religious and secular, and sacred and profane, by separating those out, we can really concentrate on creating the sacred secular or authentic business. So that's just an idea as a frame that when you look through it at any part of your business life, any part of your non-religious life, you'll begin to notice all the ways in which secular and profane have been collapsed. And as you uncollapse them, it'll give you more freedom to really bring your heart to what you're doing. And it'll make you more effective, because the more of you bring, the more of your gift you can bring, and the more people can reward you for your gift. So that's it for now. Namaste. No mistakes. New mistakes.